The next class, or classes, more on that in a bit, of submarine the Japanese started were the 1,800 surfaced and 2,300 submerged ton I 53 class, sometimes called the Kaidai 3 type, sometimes called the I 53A class and I 53B class, or I 56 class, sometimes called the Kaidai 3A and Kaidai 3B types. So we're three classes in and already on our third type. Confused yet? Trust me, I had as much fun chronicling it as you are following it. Don't worry, it'll get worse. We're not even in the 30s yet. The reason I said classes was that while under construction, it was decided to modify the bow of the less advanced ones to a longer, more streamlined raked form. It didn't meaningfully affect their performance, but it did break them into two groups. The snub nosed A group, consisting of eyes 53 through 55 and 58, don't ask, and the rake bowed B group, consisting of eyes 56, 57, 59, 60, and 63. Hey, we're I 61 and 62. Well, don't jump ahead. They were somewhere between the smaller rowboats and the larger cruiser types. Getting smaller again. That's not to say they were small. They weren't, especially for their time. With the treaty effectively banning commerce raiding, good luck on that. They were tasked as fleet boats. That is to say, they would operate with the fleet. As such, high surface speed and a good range was called for. They just couldn't have both. They had a pretty respectable range, but only at speeds that made them too slow to operate with the battle line. They had a good top speed, but maintaining it meant they passed everything except a gas station. As was universally found, the idea of a true fleet submarine would have to wait for nuclear power, something Japan is to this day hesitant to embrace. Added to this was the normal large submarine problems and Imperial Japanese problems in particular of being industrially archaic. They were loud, slow to dive, hard to maneuver, easy to spot on the surface, etc., etc., etc. As a result, once the war started, they were never used as fleet boats, instead, taking up the usual role as patrol boats, and they were getting worn out. So once the initial conquest was over, the survivors were mostly relegated to training for the rest of the war. Late in the war, a few were converted to chitin carriers as Japan went wholesale insane and maniacally embraced the idea of questionably useful suicide weapons. Fortunately, none ever saw use in this role. Just to make it more confusing, in May 1942, they were renamed, renumbered. This was done by simply adding a 1 in front of their current number name and was part of a general policy to streamline the numbering convention. If anyone can unravel that kitten string, let me know. Yes, I know it was the Kaidai types. Let's please just move on. Since their frontline service was so short and they mostly operated together ish, I'm just going to integrate their service histories for simplicity's sake. I 53 was started April 1st, 1924, and completed March 30th, 1927. I 54 was started November 15th, 1924, and completed December 15th, 1927. I 55 was started April 1st, 1924, and was completed September 5th, 1927. I 56 was started November 3rd, 1926, and was completed March 31st, 1929. I 57 was started July 8th, 1927, and was completed December 24th, 1929. I 58 was started December 3rd, 1924, and was completed May 15, 1928. I-59 was started March 25, 1927, and completed March 31, 1929. I-60 was started November 10, 1927, and completed December 24, 1929. I-63 was started August 12, 1927, and completed December 20th, 1928. Main armament was 6 bow and 2 stern 533mm torpedo tubes for 16 torpedoes. A single open 120mm deck gun was mounted forward of the sail. Propulsion on the surface was provided by 2 diesel engines, which produced 6,800 horsepower that ran the 2 propellers and recharged the batteries for a surface speed of 20 knots. While submerged, they used their batteries to power 2 motors, which produced 1,800 horsepower for a top speed of 8 knots. Range on the surface was 10,000 nautical miles at 10 knots, and submerged they could do 90 nautical miles at 3 knots. Test diving depth was 60 meters. In July 1944, I-157 was fitted with the Type 13 radar. I-63 was accidentally rammed and sunk by I-60 February 2, 1939 in the Bungo Strait. She was raised and scrapped pre-war. I-53, 54, 55, 56, 57, and 58 started the Pacific War December 1941, patrolling the Gulf of Thailand in support of the invasion of Malaya, while 59 and 60 were in port finishing overhaul. While doing so on December 10th, I-58 spotted Force Z, and while unsuccessfully attacking, she was able to get off a contact report. In January and February 1942, now joined by I-59 and 60, they supported the conquest of the East Indies with some success. On January 17th, northwest of Krakatoa, while trying to attack the troop transport Mount Vernon, I-60 was sunk by the British destroyer Jupiter. In March 1942, they were recalled to Japan and were mostly used as training subs. In June 1942, the now I-156, 157, 158, and 159 supported the Battle of Midway. In June 1943, I-155, 156, 157 supported the Aleutian evacuation. In mid-1945, I-156, 157, 158, and 159 were converted into Chiton carriers. Post-war, they were scrapped or scuttled.